morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, July 18th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the people's champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, I think Kirk Herbstreit kind of wrapped up what every Buckeye fan is thinking. He said on Twitter yesterday, kind of hinted on Twitter yesterday, that Ohio State is flying under the radar entering the 2016 season. He intimated that as a good thing, and I will say, we all know Urban Meyer is at his best when he's at an underdog or when people doubt him. Back. Just talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, I think people are insane to doubt Ohio State. Remember when they were a 4-point underdog against Wisconsin, what the final score was? It was only the biggest upset of a Vegas scoreline in history. It was like a 63-point swing from what Vegas thought, right? So Urban Meyer is the master of psychology when it comes to the nobody respects this gig. A lot of people, it's an easy card to play, right? Any sport, any coach can say, they don't respect you. It's hard to get the guys to really buy into that reality. Look what Urban did in 2012. Nobody respects you. You guys, won 6 games last year. You were the worst Ohio State team in a century. Nobody thinks you're going to do anything. What happened? 12-0. This to me is one of these situations where if you can put Ohio State as an underdog, I will take it every single day of the week and twice on Saturdays, because Urban Meyer with an underdog team that has more talent than maybe anybody in America, that's a winning formula if there ever was one. I don't agree with Herbie a lot, but in this case, he's absolutely right. People who are sitting there, giving Michigan as much credit as Ohio State when Ohio State beat them last year by 29 points, and they don't have a quarterback while we have a returning Heisman frontrunner, they're out of their dang minds. It's insane to me. Ohio State, if you look at these, and I'm not saying with the scarlet glasses, I'm saying this looking at the teams that are coming back. And the Buckeye have been doing all these previews of all these teams. They've been studying them left and right. Ohio State is clearly the most talented team in the Big Ten, and they're one of the few teams that actually has a great quarterback returning. Why people are underrating this team is beyond me. They go out to Oklahoma and beat a team that's pretty well known for being Choklahoma. This is going to be a whole different ballgame for the Buckeyes.
Big game Bob Stoops, by that, his nickname now is he loses big games. But let's say Ohio State and Oklahoma, as expected, go into that game each 2-0, and Oklahoma, they have a tough opener with Houston. In Houston, not on Houston's home field, but where the Texans play. But let's say Ohio State and Oklahoma both take care of business. They're both 2-0 going in to the showdown in Week 3 in Norman. I mean, you think we know the Buckeyes will be an underdog because, Oklahoma's going to start the year higher ranked than Ohio State. They both start off 2-0 and look good doing it. Oklahoma will be a favorite going into that game. Do you think it'll be like a field goal favorite? Do you think people are going to make the mistake of saying Urban Meyer and his boys are a touchdown underdog?
I think it will be less than a touchdown. Look, Vegas rule is home team gets 3 points automatically, right? And so they're going from there. Essentially, if the smarts in Vegas are going to be saying this opens up as a 1.5 point game between these two in a neutral field. And I was in Las Vegas this past week and actually looked at the line on this game. And right now it's going between 5 and 6.5 for Oklahoma in terms of being a favorite. I think it depends if Oklahoma goes out and takes care of Houston, who just won the Peach Bowl. Let's not forget that, people. It's kind of a big win. All right. But if they actually take care of Houston with a little bit of flair and style, which again is far from a foregone conclusion in my book, they're going to be sitting around that 5.5 to 6.5 number. But I don't think it'll be a full touchdown, especially because Ohio State's in position to put together 2 really nice looking games. Blowouts over Bowling Green and Tulsa, 2 teams that had good seasons last year, but just clearly aren't noticed class. Buckeyes go out and win a couple games, 49-7 type win. They're going to be in pretty good position in terms of believing in themselves. And let's face it, gambling lines' jobs are to put the money evenly on both sides of the equation and let the house collect the vig. That's how the gig works. It's not exactly how Vegas thinks it's going to work. I think a lot of people have that misconception. But the truth of the matter is, Ohio State's going to be an underdog at Oklahoma. And that Urban Meyer mentality of nobody respects you is going to be gigantic, especially, by the way, when Ohio State's last big game was a bowl win over Notre Dame and Oklahoma's last big game was a blowout at the hands of a team that, well, let's say not a lot of us like in the playoffs. So anyways, that I think to me is going to be very fascinating to see, though, because Oklahoma sort of got exposed like Iowa did in the postseason last year. And I think a lot of people are going to be questioning whether Oklahoma has the bona fides that they thought they did.
Bax, this is the toughest Ohio State schedule I can remember, and I've been a fan since I was a little kid, and I've covered the team professionally since 2002. This is the toughest schedule I can remember. I mean, the schedule is tough when your gimme games are Bowling Green and Tulsa, who are both going to be bowl bowl teams this year. I mean, they're not going to be like, obviously not national championship contenders or even close, but when those are your two like weak games, like your schedule's pretty tough. Then you go at Oklahoma. I would argue that is maybe the toughest game for any top 5 or top 10 team in the country. Is there anybody else in the top 10 that's playing another top 10 or top 5 team on the road in non-conference play? I don't think so. And then you look at the Big Ten schedule. Not only are they going to 9 Big Ten games this year, but Ohio State has the toughest of the Big Ten schedule. They go not only at Wisconsin and at Penn State, which say what you will about the Badgers and the Nittany Lions this year, I don't think either team's going to be that great, but those environments at night are tough. Furthermore, Wisconsin will be coming off a bye when they play Ohio State. Penn State will be coming off a bye when they play Ohio State. Ohio State will not be coming off a bye in either week. And then even the games at home, in the crossover games, Northwestern's a solid team. I think Nebraska's going to be the most improved team in the Big Ten this year. Buckeyes go at Michigan State the second to last week of the season. We all know the Buckeyes play very, very well at Spartan Stadium. But to play at Michigan State and then Michigan in the season finale at home the following week, I mean, playing at Michigan State and then Michigan in consecutive weeks, I kind of wish those games were broken up a little bit. Can you remember a schedule this tough? And just give your thoughts on this schedule, Bax.
Well, I agree with you, first of all. Ohio State plays one of the 10 hardest schedules in the country. And in terms of a true road game, they have the hardest true road game of the major contenders for the championship going to Oklahoma. Now, Alabama plays USC on a neutral field. That'll be interesting. LSU and Wisconsin on a neutral field. That'll be interesting. And that's at Lambeau this year, I believe. So that'll be fun to watch. But Ohio State is certainly giving themselves one of the bigger challenges. By the way, Tulsa and Bowling Green last year were 2 of the better non-Power 5 teams in the country. So those alone as gimmies are really good gimme games. You mentioned the gauntlet, Wisconsin and Penn State back-to-back. Regardless of how good those two teams are, there's 2 things they have in common. 1, they hate Ohio State as much as they hate anybody, and 2, they have very good home field advantages. Ohio State has lost at both of those places and then also distance pass. All right, so I don't really want to say that those are going to be easy. Those 2 games scare me more than a lot because I think it's going to be coming off of the high from the Oklahoma game, and it's going to be in a situation where maybe a young team could get caught up in this 1 or 2 weeks in that situation. Coming out of the West, I mean, look at the teams they play. Wisconsin was a 10-win team last year. Northwestern was a 10-win team last year. And Nebraska, spoiler alert, I'm picking to win the Big Ten West this year. They had the worst luck of anybody in the country last year. They probably should have won 8 or 9 games. And so that's pretty darn difficult. And that doesn't even finish with the season ending of at Sparty and home against that school up north. You want to talk about tough schedules. This one, I had to go all the way back to 2002 to think of a schedule that I thought was close to this. And here's why. If you look at the non-conference portion in 2002, Ohio State hosted Washington State, who had just played in the Rose Bowl. And actually, I believe, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, they played in the Rose Bowl again that year as the Pac-10 champions at the time. The Buckeyes hosted Texas Tech that season. The Buckeyes went to Cincinnati that season. And then, by the way, on the road, they had, at the end of the year, Purdue and Illinois, who were the last 2 teams to represent the conference in the Rose Bowl. They also had to go to Wisconsin. And then at home, their home teams were ranked Penn State, ranked Minnesota, and ranked that school up north. So that season was a hell of a schedule, too. And I think a lot of us look back at it and go, hey, the Buckeyes ended up winning it, and it's great. We kind of forget how hard that road was. How many games did they win by less than a touchdown? And it wasn't just because the offense was Maurice Clark, and that's about it. It was because they played a really difficult schedule against the Big Ten in 2002 that was clearly the best league in America in terms of depth. So we're talking about the hardest schedule in at least 15 years for Ohio State, and with a much, much younger team than that 2002 set of Buckeyes that brought back so many key contributors among the upperclassmen. This schedule's hard. I don't know if they necessarily get through this unscathed. The key is going to be if you lose a game, if it's one of those Penn State or Wisconsin games, you have a lot of time to recover, get your feet back underneath you, and then really rock it down the stretch like the Buckeyes did after losing to Virginia Tech 2 seasons ago. This is a hard schedule. And if anybody down south wants to, put their schedules on the table and measure them, then I'm glad to put Ohio State's up against anyone's because there's no Grambling State on the schedule in November.
Friday Night Lights, just 4 days away this week at Ohio Stadium. Now, I think it starts like at 6:30 p.m. On Friday. I would advise the listeners out there, if you're attending Friday Night Lights, don't worry about getting there early. There's not going to be much crowd there. I would say get there at 7, maybe 7:30. It's free parking, free admission. There'll be 3,000 to 4,000 fans there. Maybe there'll be 5,000 fans there since we've been talking about it a little more this week. And we'll be talking about Friday Night Lights throughout the week. But, Bax, just, from a global perspective, what are you looking forward to the most at Friday Night Lights this week? You cover it every year with me, and what are you looking forward to the most this year, buddy?
Well, aside from your awesome Periscope channel, which everybody should totally check out, Biddle was all over it last year. I would say the first thing to keep in mind on this is that Friday Night Lights is the official end of summer recruiting and the official let's get going football camp's right around the corner. Every year, this is the capstone event to months and months of work in the off season. And it's very rare when a year goes by where 1 or 2 or 3 players' recruitments isn't resolved. Remember last year with Gavin Cupp, whenever he came to Friday Night Lights and Sparty pulled his scholarship over it, and he actually ended up at Ohio State? That was probably the story of the day when we were there last year. 2 years ago with Torrance Gibson showing up in this spectacular leopard print shirt and then deciding at the last minute he was essentially going to say, screw it, let's go work out, and went out and performed. To me, I remember standing 2 feet away from Gibson that day and asking him, hey, is this changing your mind? He's like, this is as top as it gets. He looked me right in the eye and said that when he was posing with some fans. And that was the year we saw Benjamin Victor come out and just drop. And my jaw was on the ground the whole night watching Ben Victor. I will say that. And that's one of the reasons I'm so high on him to this day is that performance in SNL. It's shorts and it's T-shirts, but it's the best against the best. It's really interesting to watch it play out. And with the Buckeyes having all these 5-star guys coming in this year, limited space in this class, a lot of recruitments are looking like they're about to be coming to a head. I think the Buckeyes are going to pick up a couple guys in this next week or so here, and I will not be surprised when a commitment comes Ohio State's way or more from a 5-star rated player. That's something to keep an eye out for 5-star Friday Night Lights. And by the way, I'm expecting probably the biggest attendance we've seen yet, probably that 5,000 range.
I'll take that. 5,000 sounds good. We don't want it to be like crazy where like I'm telling people, hey, just park outside the stadium. It's all good. You don't have to worry about it. We don't want it like a
this isn't a Michigan spring game, Dave. It's okay.
Right, exactly. This is more on the level of a Michigan spring game. You're not going to come out and have 99,000 people at the Horseshoe like an Ohio State spring game. But great stuff, as always, out of Matt Baxendell. We would not expect anything less out of the People's Champ. Thank you, Bax. And thanks to the listeners out there. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. And make sure to check out our Friday Night Lights coverage throughout the week. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.